The observation is brought to you by Cash App. Cash App's an easy way to send your friends money back and forth, and it's also a super, super easy way to invest into Bitcoin. You can do it with as little as $1. And if you use the code Aubrey and you're a new user to Cash App, you'll get $15 in free money when you sign up. Terms apply, so use my code. And now let's get into the show.
You don't own me.
All right, well, this was like a last minute thing that I decided to do yesterday because I was texting both of you at the same time. So I have Natalie Brunell on the show because she's in town hanging out. She's a host of Coin Stories, massive podcast. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe right now.
Thank you.
And it's on, what's it on? Everything?
Yeah. Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, all of it.
And then the man who's most famous for
nothing.
for red pilling, orange pilling?
Orange pilling administrator.
Saylor. But also the CEO of Blockchain Investment Group, Weiss, is here too. Just a good friend. And I feel like just good Bitcoiners, just good energy Bitcoiners. I was like, we should just riff on the couch and talk about shit because Elon sold 75% of his digital assets yesterday. I thought it was interesting. And
just Bitcoin. Apparently he didn't sell any Doge.
I know.
Because it's not worth anything and wouldn't raise any money. Like he was trying to raise cash. You can't sell your Doge and raise cash when it's pretty much worthless.
So what are your thoughts on paper hands Elon, Natalie?
Well, it's interesting. There was a tweet, I think by Kale, or maybe it was Zero Hedge, I can't remember now, but they were like, maybe this is what sparked the liquidation of 3AC or some of the crypto. Because there was that point where it just, that red candle went down and it was probably helped by some of this selling. So, it's a bummer because Tesla tweeted, or Elon Musk tweeted that Tesla had diamond hands and clearly he has paper hands.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that people's view on these things is a little bit too dramatic. If everybody wants Bitcoin,
Twitter dramatic?
Yeah, especially the maxis, right? I love the maxis. They serve like a really important role.
Yeah.
But if Bitcoin is going to fulfill all the expectations that maxis and other people have for it, you've got to allow for people to buy it and sell it as they want. They can hold other assets. They can have other investments. They can sell it when they need cash like Tesla and Elon did. And you just have to kind of like be very accepting of what people want to do. He didn't sell all of it. He still has 25%. That's more than anybody who's bitching about it is like complaining, right? Nobody's got $250 million worth of Bitcoin that's complaining on Twitter. So he's got more than them. I get that he has more money than all of us, but he still has more Bitcoin. And I don't know, like, we have to be like kind of accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Let people do what they want.
I love that. We talked about this a little bit on your podcast. I was on Natalie's podcast last week. Go watch the episode. I'm shilling so hard for you on your show.
It was a great episode.
It was flex from both of you.
But it was, like there's an interesting conversation happening right now in the Bitcoin circles about Bitcoin maximalism and freedom. And just, I've always taken the approach of like, I don't really give a shit what people do with their own money. It's theirs. It's in your wallet. I don't need to know what you have or what you own. If you want to sell some of it, I don't know your personal circumstances. I don't know what's going on at Tesla. I don't, people do get so fucking riled up about this stuff. And it's like, okay, if this is how this person wants to operate, isn't that the ethos of Bitcoin to begin with? This freedom, this like get, hands off, laissez-faire approach to everything. So what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you feel? What do you identify as?
Yeah, I completely agree. I always found it very ironic that these kind of very libertarian views on everything apply to everything except Bitcoin. It's like, no, you need to own only Bitcoin. Yep. All your money has to be in it. You have to be irresponsibly long, but we support all kinds of freedom. But we want to dictate how you Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So it just never made any sense to me. And I do think that the maxis play a really important role.
Yeah.
My fear is it gets a little like the boy who cried wolf. Like they get so bent out of shape over all these things that don't matter. Then when we get to things that really matter, like protecting the protocol and not having any material changes to Bitcoin, we don't want the risk of all these maxis just kind of having been squawking for a long time about a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter and not get the attention it deserves when we talk about something that really matters.
Totally.
Well, a couple points. I just don't like toxicity in general because I just think that we can handle things with more, what does Saylor say? Cheerful and we
constructive
can be
and
constructive
cheerful.
And cheerful.
That's right.
which is I think a good point, because we still have so much work to do to bring people in. Like getting people onboarded and educated is, I think, the most important. And I think it's important to recognize that there is a difference between Bitcoin and crypto, but we don't have to basically make people feel completely stupid if they onboard as, you know, an altcoiner and then eventually make their way to Bitcoin, which happened to a lot of us, I think. Like I started with other tokens because they were cheaper and I didn't understand Bitcoin, and then I made my way to pretty much just Bitcoin. But yeah, I'm a believer in free markets. If you want to invest something, you know, it's your risk tolerance that you have to assess. But I do think they also serve some purpose in terms of pointing out scams or potential, you know, risks that involve leverage or companies that maybe you shouldn't trust or you should look into a little bit more. So, you know, I see both sides, but I mean, I've been pegged as a maxi. I wouldn't go out and attack someone for not being Bitcoin only. I just don't even put them in the same category though. Like, I think my mission here is to talk about our broken financial system, educate people on that, why Bitcoin fixes some of those issues. And I don't really touch the other stuff. So yeah, I don't think they fix the problem.
So what do you think about like people canceling Nick Carter and that whole thing? Did you feel that was warranted or fair, or what do you guys think about how that?
I didn't follow it that closely, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I do think that Twitter is a very dangerous place. There's a lot of very passionate people, and people can say stuff without any kind of recourse, right, in that environment. And so I just think you have to be, if you're someone who's on Twitter and you enjoy Twitter and you're just there to kind of shitpost and have fun and everything, that's great. Go do that. But if you're a Nick Carter or a Michael Saylor or someone on there with a purpose and a mission that wants to, you know, educate people or talk about something, then I think you have to be a little more measured in what you choose to do. And when you start entering into conversations about particularly polarizing or divisive topics, all you're really going to do is alienate a good portion of your audience that would have otherwise potentially listened to what you had to say about the things that matter to you. And I think all of us do a pretty good job of kind of staying in our lane, not making it about us, making it about the things that we care about.
Yeah, and we kind of were talking about this before we started rolling, but I think Natalie does a really good job of this in terms of, you could easily put out your opinions on a lot of issues, and you were on Fox the other day, and of course they're there for a little bit of sensationalism. Like that's what sells, right? You have a strong opinion about something like that. I think they put up something about AOC in the weird cuffs thing. It's like she shouldn't have had her arms back like that, and those things go viral. You know, it's a funny clip, and you can sort of pick at it and like, but you do a good job of not doing that, and I think it's strategic, and I think it's admirable, because sometimes there's just not value in going there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not used to political commentary shows or political opinion shows, and I'm super grateful for the chance to do things like that. It's just, that's not my wheelhouse, and to Eric's point, I don't want to alienate people that could, you know, get into Bitcoin because I have a certain view on one side or the other of the political spectrum. And to be honest, I think I'm very genuine when I say, after 10 years of being a reporter, I'm jaded about politics in general. Like, I don't care what side of the aisle you are. If I meet a politician, I just automatically have a sense of distrust. And I you know, some of these things that pull out viral moments in terms of the media, like AOC with the handcuffs, like I'll be happy to, if it was a Republican, I would be happy to say the same thing. It's political theater. We have a ton of it on both sides. It's ridiculous. I'm happy to point it out. But again, that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on like what's wrong with our economy and why, and how Bitcoin is something that could potentially fix it.
I think Natalie does an exceptional job of not only bridging to the points that she wants to make when they ask her a question. Yeah. Like, and going on all the shows you go on, they're always asking kind of leading divisive questions. Not only does she bridge to constructively talking about Bitcoin, but she does it in a very bipartisan way, espousing the benefits that the folks on the left and the constituency that they claim to represent would like, whether it's banking the unbanked, bridging the wealth gap, etc., talking about her personal like stories and why she got into it for that reason, as well as talking about it from an investment and more of a conservative kind of perspective. Because Bitcoin really is like one of the few things that we've come across in many years that is not only like apolitical but bipartisan.
Yeah.
And you can look at like the Lummis-Gillibrand, bill. That's bipartisan support from 2 United States senators. Tell me something else in the last couple of years that's had bipartisan support. So I think to politicize Bitcoin would be like a terrible mistake because it really should appeal to both sides equally.
You really have to see my clip where I somehow transitioned talking about the hypocrisy of riding private jets like Hollywood and Washington and being advocates for the climate change and green energy. And I managed to put Bitcoin mining energy, and I mentioned
was that John
nothing.
Kerry related? Is that what he was? Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
I mean, he's married
I said nothing.
He's married to Heinz.
wait, what was the thing?
Right?
Did you, oh yeah. What?
He's married to like the
Teresa,
Heinz,
Teresa
like,
Heinz
yeah,
is his
as in,
wife.
like, Heinz
The
ketchup.
ketchup.
Yeah,
Like,
which obviously,
I wouldn't fly commercial if I were him either. Oh no, sorry.
Why is John Kerry relevant at all? It's 2022. Anyway.
Wow. He's the climate
See, I couldn't go
czar.
on Fox because you'd get that, and I
Way
would.
to stay away from those political
you guys,
third rails. Good job,
he's the
Aubrey.
Fox. I will
climate
rail.
czar.
Have we taught you nothing?
I just like how I just get like that. Sometimes I shoot from the hip a little bit on Twitter too, like the comedy, because it's just so just right there.
Cheerful and constructive.
I know.
Well, he's the climate czar, by the way. So
Irony,
But that's
right?
why it's funny.
carbon
Yes, it is.
Anyway, but you did a great job of like, I think this should be your new bit. Like you go on these shows and it's like, how difficult of a topic can we give Natalie to something?
Right.
How does she
pivot.
whip it back around?
I know. I was like, how do I pivot AOC's handcuffs to Bitcoin? I managed to say in every segment, I was like, well, this isn't what the working class
Bitcoin
person
fixes
is worried about.
Yeah,
They're worried
gets
about
you a
rising
tweet.
prices.
I'm on Nickelodeon today. Going to teach these kids about Bitcoin.
Oh my god!
I'm going to do my best, okay? I will try, but it's not
I love
always
it.
easy.
You do a great job.
I just want to get your takes on the bear market and just how you're feeling, staying alive, existing.
I'm going to be honest. I always knew that we were headed for some sort of a mini crash, and then they're going to initiate the money printer again because that's what they always do. I just thought that Bitcoin would ascend to higher highs before that happened, and that the support level would be more around 50. So you know what I did? I kept buying like 50K. Oh yeah,
Like Saylor.
Let's swing some more in there, and then 60K. Yo, shoot, it's going to 100. I can't miss this. Swing some more, dollars in there, and now I'm like, oh shoot, I'm down a lot. I could have used that money to like help my family, and I definitely have cried about it like a little bit because
If only one of your friends would have told you it can go down.
I didn't believe
Natalie's
those
like, it's
people.
up 100K.
I didn't believe those people.
Thanks.
No, but like in all seriousness, like I financially help my family, and so it's hard to look at your account and see it down 50% or whatever, because you're like, I could have used that money. I could have had more Bitcoin, whatever.
Yeah.
But we're all in this boat together. That's what I try to remember. I'm not down $1 billion like other people.
I mean, you're earning your stripes, right? Like everybody who's been in Bitcoin for any significant amount of time has had this experience. And so I actually think this bear market is way more encouraging than past ones.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing this time that's different than what I heard in past bear markets. Past bear markets, it was people saying, oh shit, what do we do? Did we just light our money on fire? Is this gone? Yeah. This is going to go away. Government's going to regulate it away. This is dead. Now what I get, because I have like my fun like Bitcoin investment group, and the calls that I'm getting are not that like they were in the past. Now it's, let me know when it's time to buy more. Is this the place to step in? Is this the bottom? How low do you think it's going to go? That's a very significant difference. People finally looking at the dip as a buying opportunity. Yes, to all you maxis who've always seen it that way, great. But the most of the world, not so much. It was like, oh shit, this was an experiment. Is it not working out? So, but this is very different, and I think that all the institutional investment, all the infrastructure that's been built around Bitcoin, I think we're going to see shorter winters than we have in the past.
So when do you think we come back?
I mean, picking times and numbers is kind of.
You don't want to be held to it
Bitcoin's
on
always,
the show?
Bitcoin's always going to make
Gun
you
to
look
head
stupid.
when we come back.
Unfortunately,
No, you don't have to.
unfortunately, I think it's going to turn around when stocks turn around, and
Yeah.
my guess is that's probably Q4 this year, Q1 next year.
Yeah.
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Even though everyone's happy that it's back in that 20 range, I still think, based on all the interviews that I do with way smarter people who tweet about like bond yields and all of that and understand that very well, they talk about something breaking in the system, in the credit markets. And I mean, I don't think that the Lynn Aldens and the Jeff Booths and all those people are wrong about that. I think something's going to break. In that break, it's going to be temporary because bottoms, they don't sit there. It's not a bottom like at 17K for 5 months. It's going to bottom. It's going to be pretty brutal and fast, and then it's going to go shoot back
I mean, the truth is no one knows. Right now, we're very heavily correlated to big tech equities and the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that correlation is going to break because Bitcoin is not big tech equity.
Yeah.
So it's not a stock. That correlation will come to an end. It's being reinforced by the hedge funds using it as a hedge, which don't need to get into. But if that correlation breaks prior to equities taking another leg down, then I think potentially we've seen the bottom. If that correlation stays intact and equities take another big leg down, if we see some big traditional finance blowups like we did in 2008, then I think we'll probably see lower lows than we've seen this cycle. But I don't know. Originally, I was thinking that we could trade lower, but now I'm thinking that maybe 17, 18K was the bottom. We might revisit it, but there's a lot of support there, so we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know if it goes. I feel like 17 could be bottom personally. I mean, it's not, obviously it could always go, I've heard people say 12, so, but in terms of like retail, like the CPI came out, but did you guys see that like the producer price index came out as well, which is also not great, been hurting a lot. So, I look at everything that's happening. I'm like, how fucked are we actually? Like, I feel like there's more pain to come. And that's scary right now too, to like give people advice, even though the calls are different. And I think the people that know this space and know Bitcoin, they know that it will come back. But just the overall economy right now and how people are feeling and hurting and buying a house and like New York rent prices. There was the New York Post article came out. It was like $5,000 medium rent for just to rent a spot in New York City these days. It's just fucking nuts.
So the thing to keep in mind about all those metrics, in addition to them being like woefully inaccurate, is that they're back looking, right?
Yes.
And so that's telling you what inflation has been like up till here. But what matters and what drives market is the perception of how things are going forward. So if the Fed, when they were saying it's transitory and they're not doing anything about it and this shit's going to take care of itself, that's when we had a problem, when everybody knows that we're in a real inflationary environment and it's not being addressed. Now the Fed is completely flipped and they're addressing it aggressively. And people think, well, are they going to be effective? Yeah, they're going to be really effective. What you're seeing is that effectiveness as you talk about home prices. Mortgage rates went from 3% to 6%. And as a result, home purchases have fallen to like the lowest they've been and people are breaking their contracts because all of a sudden the price of buying that home has gotten too expensive because they can't afford the interest on the mortgage. So what happens is you get this like knock-on effect where people cut the prices on the homes and you see like this deflationary effect. So in some sense, the markets are doing a lot of the work for the Fed. Stock prices have come down, interest rates have gone up, and so that kind of takes a lot of the inflation wind out of the sails. The Fed continues to raise rates. So it may be that a lot of the work that the Fed thought they had to do is kind of being done by the markets. So I think there's a good chance that we're going to start to see inflation subside a little bit, at least in the short term, until they start with the money printer again. We'll also have we'll see what this next cycle is, and if Republicans do as well as they think they will, that should be a little bit more fiscal responsibility. Yeah. So that would help too. So I think it
You're
may
optimistic.
not be Yeah, I really am. I think that we're probably in a recession, 2 quarters of negative growth, but I think it's probably not going to be depression or bad recession, and I think things are going to generally be pretty okay, better than people think.
Oh, Eric, so sweet.
Not
Love
really.
It. No, it's
I would
good.
say
No,
it's I told Natalie I thought Bitcoin was going to go down back in the 50s. I'm not just. I try to be objective.
No. You're very rational.
Yeah, I try to be objective.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I just think that all of this drives to really why I'm in this space, because going through school, I never understood what money printing was or why things were getting just more and more difficult to afford and achieve in the U.S. when it came to financial security. And I mean, a lot of people know my story. My family lost everything in the financial crisis of 08, 09. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how Wall Street had created that bubble along with government, and really just how the response created an even bigger bubble that now we're seeing the effects of, exacerbated by the pandemic money printing, which I think in the last 2 years we printed more money than in the history, right? Of
more than in the
US.
prior 10, yeah.
So all of that now, we can never go back. We can't go back up to the interest rates that once existed in like the 80s when Volcker was, now he's like this hero that raised interest rates. Well, good luck trying to do that with all the debt in the system. And Jeff Booth writes about this in Price of Tomorrow, where we are going tens of trillions or hundreds of trillions into debt just to create like tens of trillions in productive value in GDP. And so it's going to accelerate more and more. And so now the next bubble that's created is going to exacerbate the wealth inequality even more. And I think that's what really frustrates people. That's why we see the political divide. I witnessed it as a reporter. I would, cover homelessness and poverty and political corruption, and everyone just feels frustrated. They can't afford their kids' education. Millennials can't afford to buy a house. Everyone feels left behind, and like they don't have a seat at the table. It makes so much sense why crypto in general, I think, is so big, because it's almost like this populist movement by young people to say, hey, we want a shot. It shouldn't be just the big banks and Wall Street having fun. I remember Wall Street Bets last year, whenever that was, it's like, it's our turn. We deserve some of the pie. And the fact of the matter is right now, 5%, like the top 5% have 2/3 of the wealth in our country. And everybody else is basically fighting for the other 1/3. And that's not going to create an environment where people are happy and as productive as I think they could be, because people need hope. You need hope that the future is going to be better than the present and the past. And right now in the US, I think that's decreasing. I think that's why our American dream is sort of dying. And yes, it's better than in other countries because we've been able to export a lot of our inflation. We're still the global reserve currency. But the middle class is statistically dying. And I think that was the most vibrant, important part of society. And so we need to change that. We need to fix our money. And I think that until we do, we're going to keep having these bubbles. And at some point, the music's going to stop playing, and Russia and China are ready to take over. Yeah,
you need more than hope, right? Hope is not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you go back, Saylor uses this example, his house in Miami that you've been to in 1920, that house sold for $90-something thousand.
Yeah.
Right. So think about it. If the woman, the matriarch who owned that house, if she said, I want to save this money for my great-grandchildren and I'm going to give it to them in 2022. And she took the proceeds of that sale and put that $92,000 or whatever it was in a bank account, right? Those kids would get that $92,000 today, as opposed to the, $50+ million house. So that asset has appreciated with inflation, and the cash, which is trash, as Ray Dalio would say, has not. So if you're stuck holding your assets in cash, you're screwed. And, Charlie Munger, for as much as he doesn't like us, us being rat poison, double rat poison, or whatever he said, he said his operating thesis has to be that the dollar is going to zero. That's a dude who makes a living, really good one, off the dollar and dollar-based assets, saying the dollar is going to zero. Well, if the dollar is going to zero, and you're not in a position to buy a house or buy stocks or buy assets like that to help you keep pace with inflation, and you're saving your little bits, if you even have a bank, right? A lot of people don't. How do you not get screwed in that scenario? You can't. You're getting screwed. And that's where Bitcoin comes in, right? I mean, even if you can just envision a simple Bitcoin wallet that kind of has a savings account, checking account kind of vibe to it, where your savings account is Bitcoin, and any money that you're not spending, you hold on the Bitcoin side. And then when you need to transact, you transact to, a USDC or CBDC or whatever and transact. That is hope for these people. That's the mechanism of the hope that you're talking about. And that, I think, is why Bitcoin is so important. Banking the unbanked and giving them a tool to not get fucked by inflation, which, yes, we may see a decrease in the short term, but there's no way that governments are going to stop printing money. Period. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we can't ask for that.
It's just a question of when, and that's what we were discussing. It's they will have to print at some point because the debt won't be serviceable. And if we have some sort of credit liquidity crisis, which could happen, I mean, already they're stepping in, and I think they're doing all these, that they're buying bonds and they're doing, price controls or potentially what.
But they'll print for an even crappier reason than that. And that is, both parties have learned that when you promise people money, you get elected. And that's the extent of what our politicians care about, is getting reelected. So like even during COVID, Republicans and Democrats were fighting over each other who could give more to these people. It's like, you think you're doing them a service, you're doing them a tremendous disservice.
Right.
You know, and that's the problem, is you're going to get elected by promising more.
But I guess that goes back to a question of like, okay, how do people, we sitting here understand that? The people that are voting will they ever understand that?
Well, that's why I think it's really important to orange pill very influential people. You're doing your part. You're doing your part.
Trying.
That's what I try to do when I go on these shows, and I think it's important to orange pill anchors, which thankfully Michael Saylor I think has orange pilled some, and I'm trying to get them on board, because if the media understands it, they will help the public understand it. So I think it's about like, yes, we should orange pill every person in our small community, and everyone has like that ripple effect, you know. But at the same time, if you can get those people that have millions of eyeballs on them, whether it's online or on TV, those are going to make the difference. And they have to go through that educational path, which takes time.
But circling back to our initial point, right?
Yeah.
This is why it's so important not to, weigh in on a topic that has such political polarization, right? Because you alienate people. If people know that you affiliate with one party or another too strongly, and then you go to espouse the benefits of Bitcoin to them, they're already turned off by what you
they're
say.
not hearing you at all.
Right. So that's why I think it's important to get anchors from both sides of the aisle, understanding why it's
And I
important.
realize what you guys have in common just sitting here. Like, you guys are the biggest orange pillars I think there are. Like, Natalie's doing the Lord's work going on. I know, I do think it's I'm not even kidding. Going on and talking to the anchors, a lot of times they're not sitting there and going through, they're given note, not saying that they're not doing their research. That's a big job, but you're consuming so much information, so much news all the time. To really understand Bitcoin in a way that Natalie puts it is, I think, just so great. And she's helping the anchors of these shows do a better job in a sense. And
I'll say I've actually emailed, I've emailed producers and the anchors saying, hey, for free, I will give you a educational seminar on Bitcoin if you're curious at all. Like, I would love to just go through what all of this is, so that when you ask questions, you don't even have to bring me on the show again, but so that you have just a background on what this is and why we believe in it. But no one's taking me up on that.
Take Natalie up on this. That's such a kind thing, first of all, to do, but it's because we all truly believe in this, and it's like, how do we get people to understand what we understand? And it takes sometimes just sitting down with people. Like, I think the Michael Saylor story is so funny to me, because you told me when we were at his place in Miami, but tell other people watching the story.
Sure, yeah. So Michael and I have been friends for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
And I got into this space, a little bit earlier than he did, and was very interested in it. And I would bring it up and talk about it. But, he was running a company with a couple thousand people and in a very, very competitive software, business software space.
Yeah.
And wasn't interested, He didn't
like it, right? He was actually against
I don't think he didn't like it. I mean, there was the tweet, he was against it or something.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, he didn't see the need for it. Certainly there wasn't a need for it in his world, right?
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, we were kind of quarantining it at his place, where
not a bad place to quarantine.
A lot better than my apartment, I promise you. So we were quarantined there, and just kind of, as we do for 20 years, discuss politics, economies, investments. That's just kind of what we talk about. And so we're talking about this really interesting period that we're in, where the government's going crazy, printing money, stocks are behaving in a way that we don't understand. And it was kind of in this context, when the world wasn't making sense, that he was more open to hearing about Bitcoin. And so he remembers me saying something like, anytime there's like change like this, there's opportunity, big paradigm shift, we just have to find it. And then I went on to talk about Bitcoin, which I tend to do. And instead of like ushering me on to the next topic, he's like, tell me more about that. And I was like, what? Okay. So,
because you'd been involved with Bitcoin or investing for how long at that point?
I bought my first Bitcoin in December 2013.
Okay.
I started out in
7 years. This is 7 years into.
Yeah, I was investing in, I was a VC investing in internet related businesses. So when I saw Bitcoin that was a big deal because the internet was really good for transmitting information, not so safely or securely, but email, pictures, stuff like that. And then when I saw Bitcoin at a conference, it was like, holy shit, we can transmit value safely and securely, and we don't even need a trusted intermediary. Like, these parties don't need to know each other, and that was like the big light bulb moment for me. So, but it was in that context that I didn't know that MicroStrategy at the time was sitting on $500 million in cash, and he was concerned that he's losing 10% of that purchasing power a year, and was kind of in the background looking for solutions to that. And so then it was in that context that when I brought up Bitcoin, that we did as deep a dive as I was capable of. And then when he had sucked all the information out of my head, he was like, where can I find out more? And I kept pointing him to as many places as I could, and then helped him get set up to, kind of, buy some and stuff like that. So, and then obviously the student quickly became the teacher.
He's one of the most amazing communicators. Like, I study Saylor. Like, I'll watch his videos, and I just think he's so smart, so thoughtful in how he shares the message, because he isn't controversial, and he just appeals to both sides, and he's just very logical about it, really. Logical.
He is. And he's like that on any topic. I mean, the topic du jour is obviously Bitcoin, but kind of the best thing from my perspective about him doing all the podcasts and stuff that he does, people always say to me, well, what's it like being friends with Michael, because he's he's been an interesting figure for a long time, long before Bitcoin, relatively high profile. So dinners, as you guys know, and meals is kind of just what you see on the podcast. So the best thing about him doing these podcasts is now you kind of get to share that with the world. And that's kind of the best part about, being friends, is you get access to the supercomputer for whatever's going on in your life and stuff like that. And you get really good opinions, and you get it explained in a way that you can understand. And if it didn't sink in the first 10 ways it was explained, it'll get explained in 11, So you're going to get it one way or another.
He stays on top of everything. Like, he reads everything that comes out of Congress, every legislative proposal, and I commend him for that, because there's something new happening every day, and he's on top of it.
No doubt about it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So do you feel responsible then for MicroStrategy being down?
No.
Just kidding.
I mean, well, if you look at MicroStrategy, since he started doing this, MicroStrategy, the closest thing to MicroStrategy performance-wise has been Google, which is up 50%, and in the same time, MicroStrategy is up 150%. When he started this, MicroStrategy had like $1 billion market cap, and now it's got an enterprise value of like $7 billion. So,
not bad. Not bad.
I think he's outperformed. I mean, gold is down like 16% since he started. Bitcoin's up 100% since he started. So he clearly made the right decision. But
so you do feel responsible for that decision?
I don't feel responsible in any way for better or worse. I'm happy to have planted a seed and been a little bit of a catalyst. But
it is interesting.
No one's telling Michael what to do.
Yeah, but it is interesting that so many people saw 2020 and saw the response to the pandemic as that moment of like, oh, Bitcoin really is important. I'm going to take it seriously because we're never going back to the pre-COVID world. And even though they've been able to sort of cook the books and say that we've had 2% inflation, even though that's not accurate. I think now we know that for them to even bring it back down to the 2% target would literally require a deflationary bust and a depression. Like, we're not getting back down there.
Yeah, and maybe we don't have to, but
true.
Yeah, the world will go on, but hopefully now. I mean, I do think that MicroStrategy played a significant role. A U.S. public company putting it on their balance sheet and making it their reserve currency is a big deal.
Okay, all right. We do fire takes on this show because this show is about culture, crypto, current events, really.
Okay.
And so I want to know just one fire take that you guys have right now. We'll start
With Natalie.
We'll start with Natalie.
All right.
Passing the buck.
She's quicker than I am.
We know.
She's a professional.
A hot take.
Hit us.
All right.
Anything?
On what?
Anything.
On anything.
Anything that you're feeling right now. Anything you just want to spout off about.
Oh, gosh.
But something... See, that's why I feel like you can't, because we really already talked about this.
We've covered a lot.
No, we've already talked about like the fact that no one really makes opinions outside of the lane. But do you have an opinion that... Do you know what I'm talking about? We were talking about earlier.
Yes. I'm waiting to hear what Natalie says. You said she was going first.
Go.
Oh God, I have to think of an opinion that I have.
Do you have opinions?
I have opinions.
It's an opinion show.
Let me see. Oh God. I don't know. Give me a topic. Give me a topic, and then I'll
Not me.
think
The
of it.
host.
Yeah, what do you want me to talk about? I'll give an opinion.
Altcoins.
Altcoins? Well, so we kind of hit on this earlier. I am worried about the ones that are scams and that fact that anyone could create one in the same way that anyone could, build a website. So you have to do your homework, know what you're getting into. At the same time, there are people who make money on these and follow the trading charts, and then they put it all into Bitcoin. Good for you. Great. I'm happy for you. I don't want people that are don't understand the space to lose their life savings on an altcoin because they don't understand Bitcoin and they just think, oh, this is cheaper. And I'm hearing about these meme coins and run-ups to, a 1,000,000% up, and I make whatever and turn it into.
Just to follow up to that, do you feel like you're not, because you're speaking a lot to Bitcoiners, that you're not speaking to this other side, and that do you want to bring them in? I
don't want to alienate people who are altcoiners, and I don't think that I'm a toxic person that tells them, hey, you're stupid. I just focus on Bitcoin because of the things that I think Bitcoin addresses in society and in our financial system. And I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like I can't be at the track picking horses because I don't know what the future holds when it comes to any of these Polygon or this or that AMP. We just, saw that one in the news. So, I just say invest at your own risk. And good luck to you. Good luck. I hope you make a ton and put it into Bitcoin.
I have pretty strong feelings on this topic. I think Bitcoin is in a class of its own. I think that the term crypto in general does a tremendous disservice to Bitcoin. Yeah. We're conflating a lot of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, right? Bitcoin is trying to be a digital store of value, a digital gold, and the addressable market for what it's going after is hundreds of trillions of dollars, whether it be demonetizing savings accounts, checking accounts, sovereign debt. There's gold, there's massive $100+ trillion opportunity there. Then there's a segment of crypto, right? That is new technology, liquid venture capital, where people are doing cool things in the digital asset space that ultimately will have some value. And yes, maybe some of these things are securities and should follow securities law, but just like Google was a good investment, some of these other digital assets and technologies may be really good investments. And then there's a segment of scams and crap that those people should be, held to the full extent of the law, and we should crush them with everything we have from a regulatory point of view. But to conflate it all together, I think, does a disservice to everything. Bitcoin's path to success is much more clear and certain in that it is not a security, and that gives it a whole bunch of property rights and other things, and enables it to be a store of value that people can advocate for in Congress and legislatively. So I think it's on different footing.
Okay, seriously, one last question. Do you think that we'll always use the term crypto? Do you think that this is just a noun term and we'll talk about it differently? Because people have tried different things, digital assets, like cryptocurrency formally, digital money. Do you think we're going to... Terminology
changes.
Because we don't sit, right now, if someone goes Google, that's a website. Mm-hmm. People used to at one time be like www.
Right.
/ you know what I mean? And that was because you needed the reference of knowing that was a web domain that you're
Now, it's
referencing.
also a verb too, and I think you could see an evolution like that with Bitcoin as well, where people won't refer to Bitcoin as crypto. They may still use the blanket term crypto for a digital asset class and technologies in this space. But I think Bitcoin will evolve as kind of its own thing and won't get lumped in with the other stuff.
I agree.
Cool.
I agree.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on. This was awesome. I could talk to you guys all day. So good.
This is
Thanks
fun.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Later. I want to go to lunch.
Lunch.